number 6 from the 2018 AP Stat exam. We're going to take this apart. This question deals a lot with type 2 error and power of a test. If you remember what we did in class, this actually turned out to be a relatively easy question 6. I can only hope that we would get something like this as one of those big full-on questions. I think a lot of you could, with a little bit of review, probably could have done this quite well. So I'm just kind of just walk you through. Well, let's start with part A. Part A really just wants to talk about type 2 error. All right, had to fix part A, did it backwards. But let's talk about it. Type 2 error, so we fail to reject the null when it's actually false. So what we're going to say is we're going to say that this part, that the null, we're going to say that the mean systolic pressure of the corporation, of the employees, is the same as the national average. It's equal to 122 or less. Okay, that's what we're going to claim, that it's equal to 122. That's the null. But in reality, the alternative is true, where the average of the employees is higher than the national average, or it's greater than 122. Part B says, assume that the standard deviation of all employees is 15, the mean is 122, and then they give us some information about the sampling distribution. Well, let's say we took a bunch of samples of size 100 and plotted their averages. Well, their average, the X bar, is going to be 122 as well. It's the same as the null. That's what we assume to be true. And then the standard deviation would have been the original standard deviation divided by the square root of 100, which that would be divided by 10, right? So 15 divided by 10 would give us the 1.5. Now, I didn't need to do that. They did that for me, right? And the question would be, what X bar, what blood pressure level, what average is going to allow me to reject the null? How high does it have to be, right? How much greater than 122 does it have to be before I start to reject the null with an alpha level of 5%? Well, you can see that over here. That means I really want to know what number breaks this distribution into the bottom 95% from the top 5%. I want to know what value can I use to get that alpha level to be exactly 5%. So I'd say, when I drew the curve, you could have written it out in words, or you could have drawn the picture of the curve like this. Inverse norm of 0.95, 122, and 1.5 gives me, if I had gotten any average of 124.467 or higher, I would have rejected the null in this case. And that's how I did that. They do want you in this problem to list out the z-score. In my first run through this part I didn't write out. I don't know if they would have given me credit or not, full credit or not. They did say that you had to have this piece here. So z-scores are always good to put down, even if you don't think you need them. I did list out all the other relevant pieces that they had listed in the paragraph. So maybe they would have given me credit, maybe not. Part C, now if you remember in class, this is exactly how we find type 2 error. What they do is they said, well, the actual mean is 125. If I use this as my new mean, then what's the chance I'm going to reject the null? If you go back here, it's saying that in part B, it says, you know what? If you get any number greater than this, you're going to reject the null. So our question says, well, if this is my mean and this is the number I'm going to reject the null from, I want to know what is the probability under the curve greater than this number right here, using this information. And that's a normal CDF question. I drew the picture of the curve so I didn't have to define these pieces. If you didn't draw the curve, you need to tell me what each one of these values signifies. I've done that with a few of them up here. I'll probably need to do a little bit more down here with these two, with upper and lower boundaries. But anyway, that gives you 0.6388, or about 64%. In order to get credit for this part, I really did need to show that the mean was 125. I needed to know that I was going above 124.467. I needed to have the correct calculations down and get the right number to get full credit for part C. Part D, this was the easiest question on the whole part, our whole question. Here it asks me the area that we just found, right? This is really, if this is type 2 error, then this other side is power, right? So this is the power of the test. In part E, if I increase my sample size, I'm going to decrease that variability. So the curve here won't be as wide. my standard deviation is going to shrink, which means that I'm going to increase the power of the test. Remember, if we increase sample size, type 2 error and power all go up. Those are good, or power, sorry, everything that I want to happen goes up. Power goes up and type 2 error goes down. Those are inversely related. And this would increase the power of the test. That was what they asked me. The next statement is what I added later on. This would lower the average needed to reject the null hypothesis because your area is going to be closer to the mean. So it would change that. It would change this number here because I would be using a different standard deviation in the calculation to find this. I didn't put this part originally, but they said that this was required. So take that for what it's worth. And that is question 6. I would practice several of these type of questions. I'd go back to all the other old AP exams and I would probably pull out these question 6s. Now, a lot of them are going to be a lot more difficult than what they're going to put on the exam this week, but I think this is a good practice for, well, how long is a question going to be for something like this. The ones we've done, 2018 and 2019, were pretty good question 6s. So try that. Practice doing this inside a browser. Try typing it up. Remember, in this year's exam, there is no requirement to graph or to draw anything. Everything can be typed out. So give yourself a timer. Try typing it up. I think that's going to be your best case scenario for doing something like this. So practice it. Let me know how it goes. If you got any questions, send me an email.